text from the Old Testament, if you have it. And if you have your Bibles, you can turn to that. I always encourage people to bring their Bibles. I remember a story about a pastor, and this didn't happen to me, but a pastor was walking down the street in town one day, and he noticed a little boy across the street trying to reach the doorbell, but it was too high, and he thought, oh, that poor kid must be visiting a neighbor or something. So he went over there and said, are you having trouble? Yeah, I can't reach the doorbell. He says, okay. So he lifts him up, and the kid rings the doorbell several times. And he puts him back down again. He says, well, now, little boy, well, what happens now? He says, we run. I'm sure glad that hasn't happened to me lately, because I can neither run nor even think about running. Ever been in a situation where you feel yourself trapped? I bet the pastor did at that point. I don't know what I would do if the person opened the door. Cold calls, as they call them. I cannot run, so I would have to have a conversation. Life can go swimmingly for a long time, and then suddenly, without warning, an unexpected barrier, a problem so large that it appears that there is no solution to it. Like the pastor at the door, you're kind of left holding the bag, feeling frozen, unable to move forward, backward, or where to go. What do you do, and who do you turn to when things get tough? That's exactly what our Hebrew friends found themselves as they stand at the end of their first part of their journey. God has brought them out of the land of Egypt. You know the story. 10 plagues. Pharaoh letting the people go. Moses leading his people to the Red Sea. And we all know that Moses is actually, what's his name? Charlton? Yeah, we all know Moses looked like Charlton Heston. And we all know that the Pharaoh looked like who? In my sermons, there's a give and take. Yul Brynner. See, I knew somebody would remember that. How could you forget Yul Brynner? 10 plagues, last one. Leave. And they did. And I'm sure that there was a lot of excitement and joy as they began to their new life on their way to a new land and a new hope, a new promise. And here they are. They're going by this strange route. The regular route between Egypt and Judah, if you want to call it that, would be along the Mediterranean. It's flat, it's well traveled, lots of springs, but God tells them, I want you to go a different way. And he leads them down by the desert road, and it ends up ending up at the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, whatever you want to call it. And here they are with their backs against the wall, as so to speak, where their front is there's a barrier that they can't cross. At least it doesn't appear they can cross. You could wonder about God and his ideas. Back in the palace, in Pharaoh's palace, they're all talking about these Hebrews leaving. And they're going, wait a minute, aren't we the most powerful nation in the world? How could we let these Hebrew slaves leave as so easily as we did? And who's going to build the cities from now on? You got to remember that when Moses was around, the pyramids had long been there, almost 1,000 years. They were building cities. Who's going to do that? Who's going to do that work for us? And so the text is rather ominous when it says, what have we done letting the Israels leave our service? So the Pharaoh had his chariot made ready, and he took 600 chariots with him. He took his army with him and pursued the Hebrews. You can blame Moses for this trip. they certainly will. Exodus tells us that when Moses led his people out, he went by a different route, and what the people didn't know is that God had told him to go that way. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the regular road, but by the desert road. And so, why? I just love the reason here. He says, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert toward the sea, where there isn't anybody in front of them. And yet, God is right. When push comes to shove, what happens? They'll gladly go back to the way it was. Back to the pits. Back to the mud making. Back to the brick making. And the city building. So here we are. I like to call this, with the Hebrews in front of the Red Sea and behind them Pharaoh's army. They're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. The devil and the deep blue sea. What are they supposed to do? They can't go forward. They can't go backward. Mountains on the one side, mountains on the other side. They are really up a creek, so to speak, in a canoe without a paddle. So what do? Here's what they say to Moses. What is it? Because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to die? What you have done by bringing us out of Egypt. Didn't we say to you, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians, they say. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. You hear what they say? You, Moses, are at fault. But you know what they're really saying? And behind every one of these accusations is an accusation that is not just pointed at God, at Moses, but at God. You brought us out here. Who said that first? Adam. Remember him? I love to ask the adult studies in that particular text, who do we blame that the woman ate we call it an apple. I always said it was not the apple in the tree that was the problem, it was the pear below. Oh, yeah. Good. That's another joke I haven't used in a long time, not to use it again. The fact is that when Adam says, the woman you gave me, you hear the word, the accusation. It's not the woman he's accusing him. You, God. You gave me this. You brought me out here. You set me in front of this seat. You gave me the woman, Eve. Behind every sin is an accusation that we blame God. Even the insurance companies do it. Anybody an insurance agent here? Come on, you can raise your hand. Don't be shy. Act of God. We'll blame God for everything in the end. But that's the nature of sin, because we want to be in control. They immediately surrender. We want to go back. I often wonder if Moses didn't ask God, why on earth did you even do this? Why did you call me here? But Moses knew God and knew him personally. After all, they'd had conversations together. So God's response was simply, why are you crying to me, Moses? Tell the Israelites to move on. Move forward. What? Move forward? Move forward into the sea. Into death? Yeah, that's the kicker of this text, isn't it? It's the kicker of the gospel. God is calling for the Hebrews to come and die. Die to their own fear, their own failure, their own unbelief. To move forward is to move forward in faith and trust. All too often, it's too easy to go back to the way it was. As I worked at the jail, I don't know how many times I would try to tell people, when you go back, don't go back. Don't go backwards. And then 6 months later, I'd see so-and-so again. We used to call them frequent flyers, who would end up in jail in 6 months to a year later. And I said, what happened? Well, I went back. To what? To my family, to my friends, to the way I lived before, with the same people, with the same problems, and the same anger, and the same fear, and the same survival mentality. You could talk to their blue in the face, but old habits are hard to break. Old friends are hard to give up, because it's easier to retreat back to slavery than it is to come and die to self and become somebody else, become new, become one of God's people. All they could see was the impossibility of moving forward. That seems impossible. And they were afraid of drowning, even though deep down they knew the devil was waiting for them behind, nipping at their heels. But our gospel tells us with God, all things are possible, isn't it? I used to teach a class at Texas called Christian Men's Job Corps. We were an organization that dealt with probation, men on probation. They were court ordered to come to this class. So we'd have anywhere from 25 to 35 guys in this class, and they came angry. They came hating the whole system. They came because they had to, and they didn't want to be there. And I said, give us, it's an 8-week course, 3 nights a week. Give us 4 weeks. Just give us 4 weeks. Open your hearts and your minds. Give us 4 weeks. And by 4th week, 5th week, 6th week, I could see a change. Because they were constantly hearing of a possibility of moving forward, even though the impossibility seemed in front of them as a brick wall. After 8 weeks, they had the possibility of spending 2 more weeks, 6 more evenings, in order to graduate as Christian Men Job Corps. And almost every time, maybe 1 or 2 would not return. Our recidivism rate for misdemeanors in the United States is like 60%, 80% for felonies. We had a 9% recidivism rate. Very few of those guys ever recommitted a crime. And the reasons was because they ended up in church. Isn't that strange? What happens when that happens? And I could see people becoming something that they weren't before. Life doesn't always seem possible, does it? When you're going along swimmingly. When I was in Iowa, I had 3 young kids. And suddenly one day I was sitting at coffee with the farmers, which we always did. You know, where do you guys meet to have coffee in the morning? There's got to be a place in town, right? The farmers, especially the retired farmers. Is it open today? Is that where everybody else is? And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden it felt like somebody took a knife and went right down my back. Later that night I found out that, well, no, it was on Monday. It was on a Friday. I did the service on Sunday. I don't know, I felt better. But I had gone to the ER, and they had done the x-rays, and the doctor couldn't see anything. That Monday morning, the doctor down the street called me and said, you need to come down here. Anybody a nurse or a doctor in here? You know what a dissecting aneurysm of the descending aorta is. It's when my aorta split from my arch all the way down into my trifold, or what do they call it, the bifold. And I ended up in Omaha at St. Joseph Hospital, 10 weeks, and they said, you will never work again. And if you live the rest of the year, that will be a miracle. I tell you what, there are times when we reach that Red Sea and we don't know where to go. We have the Red Sea in front of us, impossible to pass. The devil behind us, nipping at our heels. Mountains to the left of us, mountains to the right. Where do we go? Every time I think of that story, I think of the song, clowns to the left of me, jokers on the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you. I said that to my staff many times in Texas. 2014, I had trouble with my legs. And they said, your aneurysm is growing. In the meantime, between the time I had it in 1998, the first time that when it dissected, in 2014, somebody had invented a graft. God kept me alive just long enough for this doctor in Houston who invented the graft to replace my aorta with a Dacron graft tube. I call it, I'm wearing a leisure suit on the inside of me. I hope it's plaid. Who knew that God could make a way? He kept me alive, and I'm still alive. I'm not supposed to be here, but I am here. I am testimony to the place that, well, when there's no place to go, God says, go forward. Go with trust. Go with faith. God put the Hebrews in an unwinnable situation so he might receive glory. And so that the Hebrews will forever testify that God, who seems to have closed the way, will open a new way. What God did for the Hebrews, he will do for us. He certainly did it on the cross of Jesus Christ, who stood there on that hillside between the devil and the deep blue sea. Mountains to the right of him, mountains to the left of him. Stuck in the middle, and yet raised to go through death itself. With seemingly impossible situations, such as the Israelites trapped by the Red Sea, we can trust that God will provide a way, because he always makes a way. It always isn't clear, but there is a way. And we can move forward with fear and trust in him and experience the deliverance that we saw and we see today. Amen?